Okay, welcome to this bonus what we've been watching. Haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks. We got a guest here as well. He's been watching movies with me. His name is Shiji. Haven't really watched a ton of Studio Ghibli stuff. As soon as he hops off, he lost interest. We're gonna go over to this side so you can kind of have a look at what I've been up to. There's a movie that I can't talk about. I can't even mention that I've seen it. But other than that, I can share my thoughts on some other stuff that I have seen. I watched Paprika for the first time with my little brother. It's more than enough spice for my liking. It was a lot, I think, from the Satoshi Kon movies. It would be one of the ones that it's all right. It's just very it's not really confusing, but just like messy for the sake of being messy. I still like Perfect Blue the most. Tokyo Godfathers is pretty good, but Paprika probably better than that one. Actually, yeah, no, it is pretty solid compared because all of his movies are really weird. But that's that. Then, like I mentioned on the podcast, I watched two of the Jobs films, The Exorcist, and what's the other one? Did I not log? No, The French Connection is up here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But the ones that I didn't end up talking about was Justice League War World, but that was just really bad. But then also Corner Office, little weird movie with John Hamm that basically had this idea of he pictures something that's not really dead, his corner office, and he is kind of going insane. And you're just wondering how much of it is his delusion. Is it actually like the conspiracy that he makes up in his mind? Is there actually any truth to it? And I think it tries to be like a satire in a lot of ways to like a workplace satire, but it just does the same beat a few too many times for me to be actually be like engaged. Although it is not like the longest movie, I feel like you cut off like 15 minutes and it just gets more down to what it actually is trying to go for. Then I watched Red, White, and Royal Blue. Putting the buck in his hand. That is quite vulgar on my end for my short review. I do apologize. Uh, but yeah, that movie is streaming on Prime Video. It's like a queer rom com movie with like Uma Thurman randomly as like the president in it. It's in like fantasy territory when it comes to like the amount of political stuff that obviously comes with having someone from the royal family and the son of the president, right? That kind of has to have parts of that in there, but that part is the most fictional, like fantasy stuff in there. But it is pretty sweet. It's charming, but nothing groundbreaking. Then, yeah, Heart of Stone. I think I briefly said on the podcast that this is, yeah, from the title, from the casting, the plot, the look, and yes, the heart of it all could not be more bland. And it's essentially it. It's like trying to take a bunch of things from other action properties and somehow end up with something worse than the Gray Man. And that is actually possible. I know it's surprising. Gran Turismo was the main focus of last week's episode. So what I actually caught after we'll get into that in a second. But Cobweb, it's interesting because I'm about to see the new film that what's his name, Woody Norman is in, Voyage of the Meter, and he's in like two movies that come out a couple weeks apart. Here, he plays scared young boy, and I don't know who he plays in this, but maybe he's curious young boy in that one. I don't know. But here, I think he makes the best out of what he's given. I think in Come On, where he really was able to shine was in the way that I guess he could just react off someone as brilliant as Joaquin Phoenix, and here he has like some really capable people like in it with Lizzie Kaplan and Anthony Starr, but they I don't know, it's too caught up in its own mystery and it ends up being a bit muddled, and I didn't really like the imagery as well. It is over 30 degrees here, so excuse me, excuse my sweating. And then lastly, when it comes to the movie side, I did watch Interstate 60. I just saw this clip of the lady on like TikTok and was like, that's such a really weird movie because there's also Gary Oldman in it, and it just like was so out of place. I was like, how have I never heard of this movie? And yeah, it's streaming on Peacock. Ended up watching it, and it's entertaining. It's like it's really weird. It doesn't really make sense. Uh, like to me, this type of movie is just not made, has been made in like 20 years. And I don't think it will ever be made again. Not because it's like super controversial or anything. It's just so simple in its thing of like someone going on a road trip and then encountering a bunch of like weird things that like lead him on the path of growing up and becoming his own person. And it could almost be like a theater, like a stage play as well, the way it goes from location to location and he meets people and he learns something essentially. But he's just like James Marsden's just like a bit of a blank canvas that's just a good guy, and he's not really giving me much for like his character growth or where I actually care about where he goes because she's just young and has opportunity. Um, it's like I don't know, the world has been handed to him. It's not like there's an actual thing of growth or struggle that he has to go through that makes me connect with him in a way. But that's Interstate 60, and that's all the stuff that I've been watching on that side of the movie sphere. But let's switch over. Let's switch gears, and I'll have a look at the series that I caught. Hijack. I already talked about it on the podcast. Been watching the new season of Harley Quinn, and it's as good as ever. I think that is like one of the few DC properties that has been able to like go on for a couple of years and actually stay true to its like to its I don't know, to its like mission statement. It's just like vulgar and it's fun. It's fun. It's pretty fun. Twisted Metal mentioned it on the podcast. Pretty good. My Adventures with Superman. I didn't really like the first couple of episodes, but I've been up to like episode 6 or 7, and it's finding its footing. And I quite enjoy it. I think it's a great origin story for those who are not as familiar with Superman as others. Yeah. Then I watched the first and second season of Heartstopper. I think the first season does have its charm in a lot of places, but what I struggle with is it's obviously trying to do a LGBTQ plus focused story that is not grounded in like this trauma everywhere, and it's like overcoming like the shame with your own self, or it's just like you live through the extension of your relationships. That's essentially the thing. It's like very teen esque of like all of your problems are solved through being with another person. And with that, all of the characters are like so perfect, and all of the outside circumstances are their struggle that I couldn't really care for anyone in this. I don't really like the lead. I don't really like his partner. Some of the people who are made out to be like the proper villains in this are either very over the top or not like essentially the villains 100% as much as they make them out to be. So it's like overdoing it in parts, and then it's also I wouldn't say suffers, but it's like one of these shows that is like, yes, we are gay and we want one of all. We want to have the whole spectrum of genders and sexualities and all of it uh, in there. And it's just like it obviously makes sense for like this type of show that's so loving towards everyone, but it just ends up being crowded when it's more about like giving space to everyone. So you kind of tick the boxes in a way. And I felt like the first season had a bit more of a focus on the main guy of the story. And now, like many shows do, they kind of branch out, like sex education, even for the straights to do it. And it's less about the main conflict or main person that we had and expands it to a wider cast. And that's essentially yeah, what this one is doing as well. I didn't really love the second season. I think it was just kind of all right. Something that is horrible though, and there's no queer people inside. Yeah, at least not. No, they are. Never mind. I take that back. But it's definitely a more straight show. The sequel series that no one asked for. of How I Met Your Father, and it's not as bad as iCarly when it comes to sitcoms still using the laugh track. It does have some actual like funny moments in there, but a lot of it is like painfully cringe, and it's just low hanging fruit. It's not clever, and all of the characters are just annoying assholes. That's essentially it. And you can definitely like spin that in a way that it is fun to watch, even if they are assholes, and that doesn't need to be a comeuppance or anything. They just don't do it in this series. High School Musical, the series, the final season, season 4, had its final run. I think the finale was one of the worst things I've seen in a long time. I don't even remember what it exactly was. I just gave it a 2 out of 10. Um, and it's, oh yeah, it's such a forced cringe way of like acknowledging someone's going away, and they use that as like as the thing to essentially tell like the show, like say goodbye to the show as well. And I didn't really like it. It was just a mess. They had a lot of like cameos in this, and it just didn't make any sense even for Disney Plus standards. It's just like it's just really bad. Uh, and then yeah, I started season 1 of Vinland Saga again. I will try to finish that by the end of the month if I can before I go to Venice. That's at least the plan. I've been really liking it so far. I know the second season is going into like a really different direction, and I'm liking the first season. But from what I've heard people tease about the second one, I'm actually even more curious about that. But that's all the stuff that I've been watching. Let me know what you've been watching, and check out the main episode if you haven't already. And yeah, I'll see you soon.